Hey, it's State of State. We got your Nittany Lion update. It's a football discussion with Tom and Justin, so kick back and press play.
With former Penn State and NFL defensive back Justin King, I'm Tom Hannafin. This is State of State. Please like, comment, subscribe, rate us, and turn on notifications. Follow us on social media at State of State Pod. Comment on our YouTube channel. And if you haven't done so already, you can become a member of our YouTube channel. For just 99 cents a month, you can get all upcoming episodes of State of State, plus our entire members-only playlist, ad-free, commercial-free. Hit the join button on our homepage or follow the link in the description of this podcast. State of State is presented by BetOnline. BetOnline continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with constant real-time odds in action and the ability to watch the games as they happen, with the largest selection of odds on everything from football to the NBA, college basketball, the NHL, and even UFC. Head to betonline.ag today and don't forget to use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. State of State is presented by BetOnline. The game starts here. It is finally upon us. The historic 12-team college football playoff kicks off this weekend, and for Penn State, it kicks off at home. Penn State hosts SMU this Saturday at noon Eastern on TNT and Max if you want to stream it. On top of that, Justin, I know you love this, is that Beaver Stadium has a ton of snow on it right now. The field has literally been covered with snow, and the grounds crew over there have been doing their best to try and remove the snow and make sure the stadium is going to be good to go for this Saturday. The anticipation is that it could feel like 15 degrees on Saturday by the time this game gets underway. So you have a team from Dallas, granted players from all over the country, but a team that lives and breathes in Dallas, traveling to State College, Pennsylvania for a game in late December with everything at stake, the college football playoff. I think this is a really exciting environment. I think Penn State fans are going to be jacked up. It's going to be a whiteout. Yes, it's at noon. I know everybody would have liked it to have been at night, but just be grateful that we're having this damn thing. Let's start off with the weather situation, because I know you hate playing in cold weather, and your experience dealing with players from all over the country, and especially guys who consistently play in one area, like they're living in Dallas, they're training in Dallas, they're practicing in Dallas, all that sort of stuff. How freaking difficult is that for the SMU Mustangs to travel to State College and play potentially in the snow and in frigid winter conditions?
It's tough, man, especially when you can't prepare to play in that type of weather, because it's not going to be that cold in Dallas, right? So unless you're practicing in AC or doing something
right
extraordinary to your practice facilities, I mean, and then it becomes, a true home field advantage in the playoffs. So essentially, like you go through Lambeau Field or something like that. But I think it does matter, and especially a lot of the roster for SMU are from their southern guys, even if you're from Dallas or somewhere in the western hemisphere. Of the United States. You can kind of, used to being a little warm. So I mean, I think it's a definite benefit for Penn State, but at the same time, Penn State has been getting some players from down south as well. So, hopefully it doesn't affect us.
Yep.
Yeah, like this time of the year, you're typically playing in a bowl game or getting ready to play in a bowl game. So when that happens, you practice indoors. So when it is typically cold and you're practicing, you go inside. So like that, fighting through the cold, getting ready to play in 15-degree weather at home, I think it's going to be a unique experience. But we definitely have the home field advantage in this one.
In terms of the coaching battle, what do you think of Rhett Lashley, the head coach for SMU?
Man, very, very good coach, right? Like, does a really good job commanding this whole ship after the way he's done it. SMU is a sleeping giant anyway, from just the fundamentals of the place, right? And a hotbed for recruiting, a lot of support from a cash standpoint. And we know this from the Pony Express. It's just embedded in the roots there. And, it's if anybody's been to Highland Park, it's like the top 5 wealthiest neighborhoods in the country where the school is situated. Great food, a lot of good things going on. So it's like a really nice university. And like I said, in this NIL era, to be able to get that talent intake and offer good academics with everything else that goes along with the process. It's in the ACC where you're not really competing with the same players that maybe the old school blue bloods might be competing for, but you can get some very high quality players and pay them top dollar to be able to put or field a great football team to the point of having an 11-2 record this year. And explosive. And that's another thing, is that they have athletes running around, and I think they do a good job utilizing all their weapons.
Talking about the coaching battle a little bit more, James Franklin, this is something that Penn State fans have been dying for years, is to finally have the opportunity to play for college football, to finally have the opportunity to play for a national championship. And it's finally here. You get it at home, and what has been described as potentially the easiest path to the semifinal, and that you're hosting SMU, one of the lower seeds. And then potentially, if you're able to win this game, you'd go on to the Fiesta Bowl on New Year's Eve in Phoenix, and you would play Boise State, which is arguably the weakest conference champion to have received a first round bye, one of those top 4 teams. So it's a great path that's laid out for Penn State. Granted, you still got to go out there and win the games. However, to me, this feels like a situation where SMU was in that argument of, would the committee put in Alabama, or would they give SMU the credit for competing in the ACC championship game, nearly beating Clemson, by the way. It took a last-second 50-plus yard field goal by Clemson to win that game 34-31. So SMU gave Dabo Swinney and his team everything they could handle. And yes, you can look at their strength of schedule, but still, everybody in this field, I think, can get everybody else. I think that's the fun part about this. James Franklin, it feels like SMU has nothing to lose, and James Franklin potentially has everything to lose in this game, because it's another pressure-packed, big-time game, and it's a must-win type of game, because the effect that could happen, or at least the reaction that could happen, if Penn State loses a first-round game where they were favored to win by, according to 8.5 by our friends at BetOnline, how much pressure do you think is on James Franklin to win against SMU?
Man, there's a lot of pressure to win a game that you're supposed to win in general, right? Regardless of it being the first round of playoffs, and especially with the playoff situation in Penn State's favor. I see Lane Kiffin give a little shot after James said, gave his spiel about the transfer portal. And it was like, yeah, this thing is unfair. Like, what, talking about the seedings of the playoffs. So I think from that standpoint, there's some level of pressure to where, like, there's a no-win situation. Like, you win, no one's happy that we won our first game at home and things of that nature, because you're supposed to win. But if you were to lose, you're playing a top 10 team in the country that's on fire, whatever the case may be. And the storyline continues to build about him losing the big games. So I think from that standpoint, there can be somewhat pressure, but there shouldn't be. I think it's an upside. You win your first round of the playoffs, like you're supposed to win. But I think there's nothing else outside of winning the first playoff game. Like, that's enough pressure in this situation. But those other factors add to the hoopla a little bit.
Let's start with Penn State's offense up against SMU's defense. I think the natural question to ask about Penn State's offense, yes, I understand the turnovers, and I understand that you lost the game against Oregon in the Big Ten championship game, but that was arguably the best Penn State's offense looked this entire season. So do you feel like that is a repeatable performance? Do you think that rushing game performance is sustainable against SMU?
It should be. I think that's the one thing that we should be able to take care of, is them up front, establishing a line of scrimmage. And again, bringing the weather into play, make it a physical game. Like, what else? When it's that cold, those pads hurt. So make sure that, it's painful for them, along with the weather and the temperature. Make sure you're physically imposing your will on them. And I think that goes a long way, right? And that opens up other things throughout the game for us to take advantage of. But I think being able to run the football is key, and I think we can do that against them.
SMU has a talented front four, and I wouldn't describe them as having the athletic capabilities and speed of a front four, for instance, like Ohio State. Like, Penn State dealt with those issues, and that was a lot. Those defensive ends for Ohio State are outstanding. SMU has more power rushers than speed rushers, and if anything, the one point I look for in terms of that battle in the trenches, and you and I have talked about it for a number of weeks, since Anthony Donko went down against Minnesota, Nolan Rucci stepped in and played very well at right tackle, to the point that they haven't necessarily put as many formations out there where there's been a tight end or a running back to chip to help him out. He's held his own, and Penn State believes in him. So it's the question of, how does SMU attack this? Is it more of a creating blitzes from different situations, different personnel, exotic looks that you can throw Drew out or try and throw him off? How much can this SMU defensive line affect Penn State's offensive line? So it's the not so sexy discussion of who wins in the trenches. Personally, I like the way Penn State has been trending in terms of its offensive line performance. And again, not to make it all about the weather, but still, that type of environment, that type of feel, it sucks getting hit that late in the game. And especially, I think the way that Katron Allen has been playing the second half of this season, that thumping, punishing back in between the tackles, SMU's not going to want to deal with that. And SMU, to their credit, was able to slow down Clemson's rushing attack in the second half of the ACC championship. So this is not a bad defense by any means, but there are going to be opportunities to be had from Penn State's offense. In your opinion, understanding that, yes, this is going to be Tyler Warren as the focal point, how might you approach that now, especially with there's no Bo Perbula to alter those looks, those packages, and you know that the running game's coming? So does it make Penn State a little bit easier to predict for SMU, in your opinion, or is it still kind of like, hey, there's a variety of ways it can hurt you?
I think they've shown throughout the year that there's a multitude of ways that they can attack defenses. So I think it leaves it wide open, especially with a couple of weeks to game plan, and you haven't seen them throughout the season or played teams that have played us, right, like during the ACC. So I think there's the style of football kind of opens up the playbook a little bit just from a personnel mismatch standpoint. No, I don't think it. I mean, you limit some of your options with the backup quarterback, but I don't think it changes anything. I think Andy Kotelnicki has shown that he can be pretty diverse in his approach, depending on who they're playing against, find those weaknesses and try to exploit them.
Defensive ends Isaiah Smith and Elijah Roberts are the bulk of the pass rush that you're going to have to worry about from Penn State, from SMU rather, if you're Penn State. In terms of the way that you saw how Drew Aller has responded to the pass rush this year, what encourages you about that going into a game like this in the conditions that he's going to be playing in? Obviously, those types of conditions can kind of slow up pass rushers, but how have you seen Drew Aller evolve when it comes to dealing with a pass rush?
His mobility has been the number one factor, right? Like just him at his size and quickness in the pocket and being able to shrug off single tacklers is incredibly valuable when extending the plays, right? And then he has the arm strength and arm talent to make any throw on the field. So when you have those type of things, you think of like a Ben Roethlisberger that has those type of traits that, and when it shows up, the magic that can happen. I think that's the cool thing with Drew Aller moving forward is he's an efficient passer. He's a timing passer. He has all the fundamentals now. And as his game continues to get more creative and I would say a little bit more backyard style, he has extremely special traits, right? And I think that's something that he's shown against the pass rush and free blitzers throughout this whole season.
In regard to Tyler Warren, how would you use him in this game? I'll say this, and to kind of frame your answer here, but help you a little bit, and just that SMU plays a lot of cover three.
They play cover three. You got to attack the seams. Attack the seams, make them move around a little bit, try to find those mismatches with the outside linebackers, and kind of go from there. Just flank them out, put them at the number one receiver, put some of your wideouts in the slots, try to attack them. Try to attack the seams, attack the middle of the field from that standpoint, or just I know more so the seams, and throw him in the backfield every couple of snaps. But I think he's shown that we can use him in so many different areas and whatever way you're trying to defend it. But from that cover three look, you move him around and try to attack the middle of the field in the sense like just attack those linebackers, get him on the move, get the boots. Make sure that he's paired up with a linebacker and running people off, doing those different type of things, finding those areas in the zone where you can get those nice chunk plays.
You and I talked about the deficiencies of Penn State's wide receiver room for the bulk of this season. So it's kind of you're sitting there being like, it'd be nice if one of these guys did something. And again, the conditions could be a little difficult in terms of traction. So we're going to see how that looks. But kind of thinking out loud here, is this something where Penn State, as opposed to throwing a bunch of different wide receiver looks out there with multiple wideouts and maybe one Tyler Warren, for instance, do you lean a little bit more into your tight end room and, for instance, put 2 to 3 tight ends out there in the formation and just kind of that weather, that late December environment where it's like, we're going to put the ball in the hands of a big bodied guy down the seam who, when you go to tackle him, it's going to suck.
Yeah, sure. Why not? I think that could come with a part of the game plan. I don't know if it's something special, right? I mean, I think when you talk about taking over the line of scrimmage, you do put a body on the body. We add a couple favorable personnel groupings in there to impose your will. We haven't done that full house look this year too much, but to be able to use that against these guys, or just using more threats, like you said, bringing in the Dinkins kid, or even Reynolds, letting him get some run and having some guys stretch the field from that tight end position. That could be interesting, but who knows? I think Coach K is going to be in for have a nice little treat for us. First round of playoffs.
And I'm glad you said that, because he's had 2 weeks to prepare for this. And we've seen how the West Virginia head coaching job was out there. It sounds like he declined or moved on from it and is going to be back with Penn State for 2025. So sounds like, for the most part, pretty locked into this entire situation with SMU and, trying to put that off the field stuff out of his mind. So it's like, yeah, you gave Andy Kotelnicki 2 weeks to prepare. The program has probably understood for a minute that Bo Prabula was going to be departing the program. These things don't just happen overnight necessarily. So yes, you lose certain packages with Bo, but you have other opportunities that Andy Kotelnicki can take advantage of. And I think the big shift now is with this expanded playoff, and even when the playoff is 4 teams, but still style points, none of that stuff matters. It's just win the damn game. And for Andy Kotelnicki, you can really mix some stuff up here and give SMU fits, because it's just stuff they haven't seen potentially on tape from Penn State this year.
True. Yeah, I think that could definitely be a case. But I think it's almost like a bowl game, right? Like, you're coming in as like a clean slate against both squads, and you're just got to move forward. Now it's probably just a countdown to 3 games. Got to win those to win it all.
Before we go any further, I want to talk to all of you about Future Fans Sports. If you've ever tried to help a kid understand football, you know that it's really hard. It's difficult enough talking to a full-grown adult who doesn't know the game and trying to explain the little nuances of the sport, because there are plenty of them. It's a complicated game. Future Fans is a new brand that helps little kids become big sports fans through storybook-led activity boxes that help them understand the sport. You can introduce the core concepts of a sport in ways that make sense to a kid. For example, instead of explaining something like downs in football, which, Justin, I know that is it's difficult when you're explaining that to a lay adult, for instance, there's this beanbag toss game that has things like 4 tries and 6 points embedded into it. And then later the storybook connects all of that to football. You've dealt with this. You work with people of all different ages and trying to spread the message about the game. This Future Fans product, I think, is a really nice tool for parents, especially.
No, absolutely. Like, any way to engage with your kids, whether it's about becoming a fan, whether you want to work in the sport, whether they want to participate in the sport, learning the context of the game from the rule standpoint and the birth of the different reasons why the game and the rationale behind the different rules really brings in different level of context for younger kids and for adults, to be completely honest, because you can't learn a wealth of knowledge without the basics. And I think this, Future Fans really provides that great educational foundation for any sports fan, participant, or avid learner.
And you're a dad, and this was invented by dads, and they figured this all out for the rest of us, which is awesome. This product is designed for kids age 4 to 8 and the football fan adult in their life. It's only $49.99 at futurefans.com, and you can get a 15% off discount just in time for the holidays with the code Penn State, all one word, PENNSTATE. Again, that's 15% off with the code Penn State at futurefans.com, so you can unlock so you can unlock a lifetime of memories around sports this holiday season. Flipping our attention from Penn State's defense to SMU's offense. Kevin Jennings at quarterback for SMU, very athletic quarterback who can be difficult to bottle up. He is, I would not say a run-first quarterback. They definitely want to drop back and throw the football, more of a spread offense, and they have probably 4 or 5 different targets in terms of wide receivers and tight ends that they feel really comfortable getting the football to. Is this the most talented wide receiver room Penn State's going to deal with this year? No, I would say Oregon and Ohio State have better personnel and more of them. So you're not going to see, however, a Tez Johnson, a Jeremiah Smith, an Emeka Egbuka, a guy who is a true alpha or difference maker, I think, within this wide receiver room. I believe that's fair to say. Kevin Jennings, however, I think presents some unique issues for Penn State in that has thrown 8 interceptions on the year. 7 of them have been against no blitz whatsoever. Just if you can get a pass rush on him with the front 4, you're going to have a lot more success with him. But then it's kind of like dealing with Oregon light in terms of what this offense is. I'm not comparing them apples to apples with what Oregon puts on the field. It's the fact that you saw how in the Big Ten championship game, and you and I talked about before and after that game, is that Dylan Gabriel can do a little bit of everything. And I believe Gabriel's obviously a better passer than Kevin Jennings. But you saw those instances where Penn State did a great job in the secondary, and then Gabriel could just scoot and he can go get a handful of yards, he could go get a first down, extend the play, maybe get a completion. Kevin Jennings is similar. I wouldn't describe him as accurate as Dylan Gabriel. So that's going to create some problems because we did see how Penn State was gassed in that game against Oregon, how the linebackers were really, really taxed in that game. If you're Tom Allen, what lessons do you learn from that Big Ten championship game against Oregon and then apply them to a team that has a quarterback in Jennings that's kind of a similar skill set to what you just dealt with?
I mean, when you say what do you learn, I mean, I don't know how much you can learn from that game, right? Like, I think it's a matter of another personnel matchup and making sure that like the linebackers are getting to their depths and when they need to, right? We talk about that movement, passing, and different things of that nature, but not trying to recreate the wheel this late in the season. I think that's a critical factor. Is like, okay, you played a good team, the number 1 team in the country. You might have had some success, but now this isn't the number 1 team in the country. So, like, not that we make our mistakes, we correct our mistakes, and we move forward, but we kind of do what we do, like the way that we've been keeping the ball in front of us, attacking when we need to attack, the calculated risks on the back end, and keep it moving forward. And I think especially when we have the talent advantage in that space and the weather, continue to move forward that way this week. That's what I would tell the defense if I was Coach Allen.
Kevin Jennings, over 3,000 yards passing this year, 66% completion percentage, a long of 87. They do have the potential to get the big play, so you need to be able to bottle that up. 22 passing touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 5 rushing touchdowns on the season. So he took over early in the year for Preston Stone, who's their number 2 quarterback and is actually entering the portal, but will be with the team, I believe, this weekend in State College. The rushing attack for SMU is also nothing, no slouch. There are no slouches in that department. Running back Rashard Smith, 217 carries for 1,270 yards. He averages 6 yards a carry, 14 touchdowns on the season, a long of 71. You do have to look at that in the framework of who they played. I think that's important. The offensive line for SMU struggled against the pass rush mightily against Clemson. And even when Clemson was not blitzing, they just struggled with Clemson's front 4. And I think that's going to be an interesting aspect of this game, is that Penn State has a very talented front 4. I'd say better than Clemson's. I think that's an easy assumption to make there, but still being able to control the line of scrimmage against SMU, can you limit that rushing attack? And then if you can do that, then how do you bottle up Rashard Smith if it's something that they try to get him out in space and utilize him in the flats and in the passing game a little bit more? So from what you've seen out of Penn State, yeah, Oregon, again, it continues to be an outlier, not to compare Oregon directly to SMU. As you said, the number 1 team in the country, but SMU has been productive in that department. Penn State was struggling against the rush in the first half against Oregon, kind of got it organized there in the second half. Not the greatest defensive performance for Penn State. I think that's very easy to say considering it was 45-37. So, some things need to be cleaned up, but that second half ability for Penn State is there defensively to really clamp down. This type of team where you can do a little bit of everything with that type of explosivity. What do you think Penn State's game plan is? Like, what's the first thing you take away
from SMU?
Yeah, what does Penn State's defense take away from SMU?
I think you always got to take away the run first.
Priority one.
I think you got number one priority is you got to take away the run. I mean, just in cold weather type of games, like the only type of success or the easiest success to have is just to turn around and hand the ball off. I think when the ball's in the air is to our advantage, especially when we think about the conditions, 15 degrees, how the ball cuts through the air and all those different type of situations. You want to make sure that they do not have success on easy executable plays like runs. And I think that would be a key factor.
Overall, I feel pretty confident about this game, and that's not necessarily a situation where I know there's plenty of Penn State fans who are like, I haven't watched a lot of SMU or seen a whole lot of SMU this year. I get it, and it's a lower-seeded team, a team that's not really commonly in this late season, hierarchy of college football. To your point, the NIL aspect has certainly helped SMU and has gotten them into a place where they can go get some very good talent. I think their secondary is going to give up some opportunities for Penn State to the points that you just said. Their defensive line could present some problems, so Penn State's going to have to be really sound there. I think overall, man, and it's something that we've seen for most of the season, is the penalties with Penn State. Just those timely back-breaking penalties, and we saw it against Oregon, 2 personal foul penalties in the first half that just kind of gave Oregon more life. And it's, you and I talk about it every week. It's like, got to clean that up. To this point, it kind of just feels like it's a little bit a part of this team's identity. I don't know how you feel.
Like the part of having to like mess up and clean up.
Unfortunately, yeah. Like it just seems like, hey, there's some like high-end positives with this Penn State football team, but it's like there's going to be some penalties along the way that are tough to get by.
Yeah. Football's a violent game, and I think anytime that you have to be careful about how you break down penalties. I always talk about the aggressive penalties, pre-snap versus post-snap. I mean, if you're walking that line and you're an edgy team, penalties come a part of the game. Can't have stupid ones. You can't have ones that are avoidable. But if you have a team that has an attitude and plays with an edge, you might have penalties depending on what happens. But I think that's somewhat of a negative positive trait to a squad. Like when you talk about teams moving forward, not like dumb holding calls or jumping off sides and things of that nature, but aggressive penalties, depending on how people call it, shows the edginess of a team that needs to have success at the end of the year.
So Penn State versus SMU this Saturday at noon Eastern on TNT and Max. This is such a long time coming, and for Penn State fans, not to blow things completely out of proportion, but Justin, it's been since the mid-1980s since Penn State was in the national championship conversation and being able to credibly win the national championship. There's a lot that still has to happen. You have to win this first game, so you really cannot look ahead. The path is the path. The evaluation of said path is great, but it all starts this Saturday. This is historic, and it is a really cool moment to look at for this football program, seeing especially what James Franklin and this staff has had to deal with and get past and overcome in the last 10 years. And someone who was a part of that, obviously as a player in the mid-2000s under Joe Paterno, but then being a part of this staff mid-2010s, obviously when Penn State won a Big Ten championship, the years of Trace McSorley, Saquon Barkley. What does this mean to you as a Letterman, and what does it mean to you in terms of being just a fan of this team?
I mean, it makes you proud, right? I think it just shows where the program is and what's on the forefront, and the opportunity to have a chance at winning a national championship, something that we haven't seen in my generation here at Penn State. So I think that is a pretty cool opportunity, and it seems to be set up in our favor. And to have the first home game at Beaver Stadium is pretty special. So, I mean, I think it's the first of many in a tradition of the college football playoffs. So it's just really exciting.
You going to be out in the cold for this game?
No, sir.
Need a big white parka if you would be going for the whiteout. I don't think they sell many of those. Thank you all so much for joining us. We'll have a complete recap of Penn State versus SMU this weekend. Enjoy the first round of the college football playoff. Thank you all so much for joining us. This episode and our entire library of shows is available now on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Please like, comment, subscribe, rate us, and turn on notifications. Follow us on social media at State of State Pod. Comment on our YouTube channel. And if you haven't done so already, you can become a member of our YouTube channel. For just 99 cents a month, you can get all upcoming episodes of State of State, plus our entire members-only playlist, ad-free, commercial-free. Hit the join button on our homepage or follow the link in the description of this podcast. State of State is presented by Bet Online and by Blue White Outfitters.